Sofía Reyes had counted down 127 days to this moment. In her small apartment in Guadalajara's Colonia Americana neighborhood, she stood before the mirror practicing English phrases she'd memorized for weeks. "It's so nice to finally meet you in person." She smiled at her reflection, then frowned. "Too formal. I can't believe you're real. Better. More honest." At 29, Sofía had learned to temper her expectations. Life as a kindergarten teacher in Jalisco meant early mornings with sticky-fingered 5-year-olds, afternoons tutoring teenagers in English for extra pesos, and evenings helping her mother with bills her father would have paid if cancer hadn't taken him when Sofía was 12. Romance felt like a luxury reserved for women with different lives. Women who didn't calculate whether they could afford both new shoes and their brother's university textbooks. But 4 months ago, something had shifted. It started the way most modern love stories do, with a swipe and a notification. Sofía's best friend Rosa had downloaded Borderless Love onto Sofía's phone during a girls' night in December, ignoring her protests. "You deserve more than grading papers and watching telenovelas with your mother," Rosa had insisted, wine-bold and determined. "There are good men out there, Sofía. American men who'll treat you right." Sofía had rolled her eyes but let Rosa craft her profile. Kindergarten teacher who believes in second chances and Sunday morning pan dulce. I love old movies, cooking my abuela's recipes, and conversations that last until sunrise. Rosa chose photos carefully. Sofía laughing with her students, Sofía at her cousin's wedding in a blue dress that brought out her eyes, Sofía hiking in the Sierra Madre Mountains, wind catching her long dark hair. For 3 days, nothing interesting happened. Messages arrived from men whose profiles screamed desperation or deception. Shirtless bathroom selfies, crude pickup lines, conversations that died after "Hey beautiful." Sofía was ready to delete the app when a notification appeared during her lunch break on a Monday. "You have a new match." His name was Michael. Michael Patterson, 33, from Phoenix, Arizona. His profile photo showed a man with kind blue eyes and sandy brown hair, wearing a flannel shirt and holding a golden retriever. He wasn't model handsome, he was better than that. He looked real, trustworthy, like someone who'd remember your birthday and fix things around the house without being asked. His bio was simple, refreshingly free of bragging or red flags. Phoenix contractor looking for real connection, not games. Family-oriented. Learning Spanish to connect with the culture I admire. Love hiking, cooking, building things that last. The message came 10 minutes later, right as Sofía was teaching her students their ABCs. "Hola Sofía. Tu sonrisa iluminó mi pantalla." Your smile lit up my screen. "Sorry if my Spanish is terrible. I'm still learning." Your profile says you love old movies, me too. "Have you seen Casablanca?" Sofía stared at her phone during recess, heart doing something stupid and hopeful in her chest. He was trying to speak her language. He referenced classic cinema. He hadn't commented on her body or asked for inappropriate photos. She typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, "Your Spanish is better than my students. Casablanca is my favorite. Here's looking at you, kid." His response was immediate. "We'll always have Paris." "Okay, I'm officially impressed. Most people my age haven't seen the classics. What else do you love?" They texted through her afternoon classes, through his lunch break at a construction site, through her evening commute home on the crowded bus. Sofía found herself smiling at her phone like a teenager, and Rosa noticed immediately when they met for coffee that Thursday. "You met someone," Rosa accused, grinning. "Look at your face. Tell me everything." Sofía showed her Michael's profile, their message thread, the way he asked real questions and remembered her answers. "He wants to video call this weekend," she admitted, nervous and excited. "What if he's not really like this? What if it's all an act?" "Then you hang up and block him," Rosa said practically. "But Sofía, what if he's exactly like this? What if he's actually a good man who sees how incredible you are?" That Saturday night, Sofía set up her laptop in her bedroom, changed outfits 3 times, and answered Michael's video call with shaking hands. The face that appeared on screen matched his photos. Same warm eyes, same slightly crooked smile. He looked nervous too, running a hand through his hair. Wow, you're even prettier than your pictures. Sorry, that sounded like a line. I'm nervous. Me too, Sofía laughed. And just like that, the tension broke. They talked for 2 hours that first night. He showed her his apartment, modest but clean, with framed photos of what he said was his late father and his younger sister. He introduced her to Max, the golden retriever who kept trying to lick the camera. He asked about her students, her family, her dreams. When she mentioned her father's death, his eyes softened with genuine empathy. I lost my dad 3 years ago, he said quietly. Heart attack. I was with him when it happened, and I still feel like I should have done something more. You know? Sofía understood exactly. They discovered they both visited their fathers' graves every Sunday. Both felt responsible for holding their families together. Both wanted children of their own someday, wanted to build something stable and lasting in an uncertain world. The video calls became ritual. Every night at 9 p.m. her time, 8 p.m. his, they'd connect. He'd show her Phoenix sunsets, the mountains he hiked on weekends, the houses he was helping build through Habitat for Humanity. She'd show him her classroom decorations, her mother's garden, the street vendors selling elote and churros outside her apartment. Michael started learning Spanish seriously, using apps and YouTube videos, practicing phrases to make her laugh. Mi sol, he started calling her. My son. She called him mi cielo, my sky. They created a private language of inside jokes and pet names, the kind of intimacy that made Sofía feel seen in ways she'd never experienced. He sent her Amazon gift cards, small amounts that felt thoughtful rather than transactional. $20 to buy books for her classroom. $50 when she mentioned needing new teaching supplies. I want to support what you love, he'd said, and she'd cried a little, not used to anyone caring about her passions. There were small inconsistencies, details that didn't quite align. Sometimes he'd contradict himself about where he grew up or what his father did for work. Once, the room behind him in the video looked different than usual, but he explained he was house-sitting for a friend. When she asked to meet his friends on video, he'd laugh sheepishly. I'm kind of a loner, to be honest. Not big on social media or having people in my space. My sister thinks I'm weird. Sofía rationalized every red flag. He was private, not suspicious. He was genuine, not polished. He was falling for her as hard as she was falling for him, and that kind of mutual intensity was rare and precious. In March, for months into their nightly conversations, Michael called her looking nervous and excited in a way that made her pulse race. Sofía, I can't do this anymore, he started, and her heart dropped until he continued. I can't just talk to you through a screen. I need to hold you. I need to see if your hand fits in mine the way I think it will. Will you come visit me? I'll pay for everything. Please, mi sol. Let me show you Phoenix. Let me show you how serious I am about us. Sofía hesitated. It was fast, maybe too fast. But she was 29, not a naive girl. She had her tourist visa from a previous trip with friends. She had verified his business license, his address, even found his supposed father's obituary online. Everything checked out. I'll come for 2 weeks in April, she heard herself say. But I'm telling my family everything. They'll have your information, your address, everything. As you should, Michael responded immediately. Smart woman. That's one of the reasons I love you. Love. He'd said love. That night, Sofía lay in bed unable to sleep, replaying the word. She'd been so careful since her ex-boyfriend had left for California and never called again. She'd built walls to protect herself from exactly this kind of hope. But Michael had scaled those walls with patience and genuine affection, and now here she was, booking flights to meet a man she'd never touched, whose voice she'd heard only through speakers, whose face she knew only through pixels. Her mother was less enthusiastic. Mija, you've never met this man in person. What if he's not who he says? Mama, I video called him every single night for 4 months. I've seen his house, his dog, his life. He's real. Her brother was cautiously supportive. Just promise you'll share your location with me constantly, and call me every day multiple times. Rosa had more warnings. Sofía, I love that you're happy, but something feels off. Why won't he come here first? Why are you the one traveling to his country? Because I have a visa and he doesn't, Sofía explained patiently. Getting a Mexican visa takes months. This way we can finally be together sooner. She didn't mention her secret hope, that this trip would turn into something permanent, that Michael would propose, that she'd move to Phoenix, that they'd build the life they'd planned in those late-night calls. She imagined their wedding small and intimate. Imagined teaching English to American children while carrying their baby. Imagined Sunday dinners with both their families, blending cultures and languages and love. The weeks before her departure blurred together in excitement and preparation. She bought new clothes with money she should have saved, practiced English until her pronunciation was nearly perfect, packed and repacked her small purple suitcase with the yellow ribbon she'd tied to the handle for easy identification. She brought gifts. Mexican candy he'd mentioned wanting to try, a hand-woven blanket in traditional Oaxacan patterns, a handwritten letter she'd labored over for days, expressing feelings that felt too big for text messages or video calls. Her students made her a card the Friday before she left. "Come back soon, Maestra Sofía," in crayon and glitter, with drawings of her and a stick figure man holding hands. She packed it carefully, already imagining showing it to Michael, showing him this piece of her world. April 15th, 2023 arrived with cloudless skies and her mother's tears. "Call me the moment you land," her mother pleaded at the airport. "The moment you reach his house. Every day, Sofía. Every single day. I promise, Mama." Rosa hugged her tight. "It's not too late to change your mind." But it was too late. Sofía was already gone, already imagining Michael's arms around her, already believing in the future they constructed through late-night promises and digital intimacy. She had no way of knowing that in less than 12 hours, she'd send her final text message. No way of knowing that the face waiting for her at Phoenix Sky Harbor wouldn't match the face she'd fallen in love with. No way of knowing that her purple suitcase with the yellow ribbon would be found in a dumpster, and her body in a shallow grave, and her dreams scattered like ashes across the desert she'd been so excited to explore. But for now, on Volaris flight Y4536, Sofía Reyes watched Mexico disappear beneath clouds and believed in love, in second chances, in men who kept their promises. She texted Michael from 30,000 feet. "On my way to you, mi cielo. I can't wait to finally hold you." His response came immediately. "Counting the minutes, mi soul. I'm already at the airport. This is going to be perfect. Perfect." She held on to that word as the plane descended toward Phoenix, toward the man she'd given her heart to, toward the future she'd dreamed of for 127 days. Perfect. The Phoenix Sky Harbor tarmac shimmered with heat even at 11:15 a.m. Sofía pressed her face against the airplane window, watching baggage handlers move with practiced efficiency in the brutal Arizona sun. Somewhere beyond this terminal, Michael was waiting. She checked her reflection in her phone's camera one last time, applied fresh lipstick, took a breath that didn't quite steady her racing heart. Immigration moved faster than expected. The officer barely glanced at her tourist visa, asked the standard questions. "Purpose of visit?" "Visiting my boyfriend," Sofía answered, and saying it out loud to an official made it feel more real, more legitimate. The officer stamped her passport without interest and waved her through. Baggage claim was chaos. Families reuniting, business travelers rushing past, the mechanical groan of the carousel starting. Sofía spotted her purple suitcase immediately, the yellow ribbon bright against hundreds of black and gray bags. She texted Michael with shaking fingers. "Got my luggage. Where are you?" "Arrivals level by the Starbucks. Blue shirt. My hands are literally shaking. Mi soul. Can't believe you're really here." Sofía rode the escalator down to arrivals, scanning the crowd. So many people, faces blurring together. Then she saw him, a man in a blue shirt standing near the Starbucks, back turned, looking at his phone. Her heart stuttered. This was it. For months of waiting, compressed into this single moment. "Michael!" Her voice came out smaller than intended. He turned around. The world tilted slightly. The face looking back at her was familiar but wrong, like a photograph that had been subtly altered. Same general build, tall and broad-shouldered. Same blue shirt, Same blue eyes, but the shape was different. The nose was broader, the jaw more angular. The hair, while sandy brown, was styled differently than in the videos. He was wearing sunglasses pushed up on his head, obscuring the exact contours of his face. Sofía. He pulled her into a hug before she could process her confusion. His voice sounded right, warm and excited, with that American accent she'd grown to love. But his smell was wrong. He told her he wore Acqua di Gio cologne. This man smelled like something else entirely, something sharper, chemical. She pulled back slightly, studying his face. You look different than your videos. He laughed, touching his hair self-consciously. Yeah? I got a haircut yesterday, wanted to look good for you. And I've been working out a lot, probably lost 10 pounds since we started talking. You look exactly like your photos though. Even more beautiful actually. The explanation made sense. People looked different in person than on screens. Lighting changed faces. Weight loss altered features. She was being paranoid, letting Rose's warnings infect her excitement. But something in her stomach remained tight. He took her suitcase with one hand and her elbow with the other, guiding her toward the parking structure. His grip was firm, almost too firm. Let's get out of this crowd. I hate airports, too many people. Can we take a selfie? For my mom? She made me promise. Let's wait till we get to my place, he said quickly. Get you settled first. I look terrible right now, didn't sleep last night. Too excited. He flashed a smile that almost convinced her. Almost. They walked toward the parking structure, and Sofía became aware of security cameras everywhere. She glanced up at one, wondering if anyone was watching, if anyone noticed that her body language was stiff, uncertain, nothing like a woman greeting the love of her life. I should call my mom, she said. Let her know I landed safely. Of course, call her from the car. It's just up here. The parking structure smelled like exhaust and hot concrete. He led her to a white Ford Explorer on level 3, clean but somehow impersonal. She noticed there were no construction materials in the back, no dog hair on the seats, none of the personal touches that should mark Michael's vehicle. He loaded her suitcase and opened the passenger door. Sofía climbed in, clutching her phone like a lifeline. The interior had a strange smell, not unpleasant exactly, but chemical, like cleaning products used to erase something. Michael slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. So this is Phoenix, Sofía said brightly, trying to inject normalcy into the moment. I'm finally here. He didn't respond immediately, focused on navigating out of the parking structure. When they emerged into blinding sunlight, Sofía noticed they were heading toward the I-10, but in the wrong direction. She'd studied the route to his address obsessively. They should be going northwest toward central Phoenix. This was east. She opened Google Maps on her phone. Do you want me to navigate? Nah, I know a better route. His voice was different now, flatter, less of the warmth she'd heard in their calls. Avoids the traffic. But there was no traffic. The highway was nearly empty, the Saturday afternoon sun beating down on endless asphalt. You seem different, Sofía ventured, watching his profile. Nervous. Just focused on driving. Want to get us home safe. Home. The word should have comforted her. Instead, it felt like a threat. She tried to text her mother but hesitated. What would she say? That Michael looked different? That she felt uneasy? Her mother would panic, might even call authorities. And then what? Sofía would look like a hysterical woman who couldn't handle meeting someone in person. Besides, she'd come all this way. She'd spent money she didn't have. She'd built dreams on this relationship. She texted instead, with Michael, on way to his place. Call you soon, Red Heart. But she didn't send a location pin. Something stopped her. 20 minutes into the drive, suburbs gave way to emptier stretches of highway. Sofía tried to engage him in conversation, asking about his sister, his dog, his work. Each answer came with a slight hesitation, as if he were remembering a script. Is your sister still coming to dinner tonight? A pause. She had to cancel. Work emergency. And Max? Where is he? Left him with my neighbor. Didn't want him to overwhelm you right away. Every explanation was reasonable. Every explanation was a lie. Sofía noticed his hands on the steering wheel, rough and calloused. She'd seen Michael's hands in videos, smooth, unmarked. These hands looked like they'd done harder labor than construction. And there, on his left wrist, a tattoo she'd never seen. Michael had shown her his wrists dozens of times during video calls, rolling up his sleeves. No tattoo. Her phone buzzed. "Rosa, did you land? Are you okay?" Sofía typed back, "All good. Beautiful day." The lie felt necessary. If she admitted her fear, she'd have to act on it. And she was trapped in a moving vehicle on an unfamiliar highway with a man who might or might not be who he claimed. They exited onto a smaller highway, State Route 347, heading south. The landscape changed dramatically. Phoenix disappeared in the rearview mirror, replaced by raw desert. Saguaro cacti stood like sentinels. Mountains loomed in the distance. No other cars. "Michael, where are we going?" Sofía tried to keep panic from her voice. "This doesn't look like Phoenix. Taking you somewhere special first." His tone was too casual. "A surprise. You'll love it. But I'm tired. I want to go to your place. Freshen up." His hand tightened on the wheel. "It'll just take a few minutes. Trust me." Trust. The word that had built their relationship, now twisted into something ugly. Sofía pulled out her phone. No signal. The screen showed one flickering bar, then nothing. She looked at the landscape rushing past, calculating. If she jumped from the moving vehicle, she'd be injured, possibly killed. But if she stayed, "You're not Michael." She said it as fact, not question. The silence stretched long enough to confirm her worst fear. "Who are you?" Her voice shook. "Where is Michael?" He didn't answer, just kept driving, his jaw set in determination. "Let me out." She tried the door handle. Locked. Child safety locks engaged. "Unlock the door. Let me out now." "Can't do that, Sofía." His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. "We've come too far." She screamed then, loud and desperate, knowing no one would hear. He didn't flinch, didn't react, just drove deeper into the desert wilderness like he'd done this before, like he knew exactly what came next. Sofía grabbed her phone and, with shaking fingers, pressed the side button 5 times fast. The emergency SOS feature Emma had taught her months ago. She had no idea if it would work without signal, but it was her only hope. The phone vibrated once. Somewhere, maybe, a distress signal was being sent. "Smart," the man said, noticing her action. "But we're too far out. No towers. Give me the phone." "No. Give me the fucking phone, Sofía." She clutched it tighter. He reached over, one hand leaving the steering wheel, grabbing her wrist with bruising force. She fought, but he was stronger, prying the phone from her fingers and tossing it onto the dashboard. Ahead, a sign appeared, "Rest area 2 miles." "I need to use the bathroom," Sofía said, her mind racing. "Please." He considered, then nodded. "Fine. But don't try anything stupid." The rest stop appeared like a mirage in the desert. A small concrete building, picnic tables, a dumpster. Empty. Completely empty. No other cars, no witnesses, no salvation. He parked away from the building, near the desert's edge. When he opened her door, Sofía bolted, running toward the building. She heard him behind her, but not running. Not panicked. He knew she had nowhere to go. The restroom door was locked. Sofía spun around, back against the wall. He approached slowly, pulling something from his pocket. A hunting knife in a worn leather sheath. "Please," she whispered, thinking of her mother, her brother, her students. "Please, I have a family. I have people who love me." "Everyone does," he said quietly. "That doesn't change what happens next." In that moment, Sofía understood she was going to die in this desert, killed by a man whose real name she didn't know, whose real face she'd never actually seen until today. All those nights of conversation, all those promises, all that carefully constructed love. It had been a digital ghost, a deep-fake demon, a trap she'd walked into willingly. But she wouldn't die quietly. As he reached for her, Sofía Reyes, kindergarten teacher from Guadalajara, decided that if this was her ending, she'd make it hard for him. She'd fight. She'd leave evidence. She'd make sure someone, someday, knew what happened here. She reached into her jacket pocket, fingers finding the small silver cross her mother had given her. She closed her fist around it and prepared to fight for every single second of life she had left. Not toward the locked restroom, not toward the empty parking lot, but directly into the desert scrub where instinct told her a man his size couldn't follow as easily. Branches tore at her jeans, her new blue sweater catching on thorns. She heard him curse behind her, heard the crunch of his boots on gravel, but she didn't look back. Looking back meant losing precious seconds. The desert was nothing like she'd imagined. In movies it looked flat and manageable. In reality, it was treacherous terrain, filled with hidden rocks and unexpected dips. Her white sneakers, chosen because Michael had mentioned hiking, found no purchase on the loose sand. She stumbled, caught herself, kept moving. "Sofía, stop!" His voice carried across the empty landscape, not angry, almost reasonable. "You're just making this harder on yourself. There's nowhere to go." He was right. She could see it as she ran, the endless expanse of desert in every direction. No houses, no roads beyond the one they'd arrived on, no other humans for miles. The temperature had climbed near 90 degrees, the sun merciless overhead. Without water, without shelter, the desert would kill her almost as efficiently as the man pursuing her. But at least the desert wouldn't bury her in a shallow grave and return to his life like she'd never existed. Sofía's lungs burned. She'd never been athletic, had spent her life in classrooms and small apartments, and now her body was failing her when she needed it most. A sharp pain developed in her side. Her vision blurred with sweat and tears and terror. Behind her, his footsteps had stopped. She risked a glance back and saw him standing at the edge of the desert, watching her with the patience of a predator who knew his prey was already caught. He didn't need to chase. He had time. He had water in his vehicle. He had experience with this exact scenario. The realization hit Sofía like a physical blow. She wasn't his first. The way he'd remained calm when she'd panicked, the way he'd locked the doors before she'd even thought to run, the way he'd chosen the specific rest stop in the specific stretch of desert, he'd done this before. Other women had stood where she stood, had run where she ran, had died where she would die. "There is no Michael, baby," he called across the distance, his voice carrying on the hot wind. "There never was. Just me. And this is how it ends. You can make it easy, or you can make it hard. But the ending doesn't change." Sofía's hand found the silver cross still clutched in her palm, the edges cutting into her skin. She thought of her mother lighting candles at their home altar, praying for her daughter's safe return. She thought of her brother, probably checking his phone obsessively, waiting for updates. She thought of Rosa, whose warnings she'd dismissed as paranoia. She thought of her students, who'd made her that card with their crooked letters and innocent love. She thought of all the women who'd loved her, who'd raised her, who'd believed in her strength. And she decided that if she was going to die, she'd make it count. Sofía turned and walked back toward him, not with surrender in her posture, but with something harder, determination. She kept her fist closed around the cross, kept her eyes on his face, memorizing every detail. The small scar above his left eyebrow, the slight crook in his nose, like it had been broken once. The way his right eye was fractionally smaller than his left. The wedding ring tan line he'd claimed didn't exist. If she survived, these details would identify him. If she didn't, they'd be found under her fingernails, in her defensive wounds, in the evidence she'd leave behind. "What's your real name?" she asked, stopping 15 feet away. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me. I should know the name of the man who's going to kill me." Something flickered across his face. Not remorse, but surprise. Most women must have kept begging, kept crying. Sofía was done begging. "You're not the first, are you?" she continued, her voice steadier than she felt. "How many women have you brought here? How many believed in your lies?" "You'd be number 7, he said, as casually as if discussing the weather. "Though honestly, you all blur together after a while." The divorced ones are easiest. Single mothers especially. So desperate for attention. So willing to overlook red flags if someone seems interested. The cruelty of it, the casual dehumanization, ignited rage through Sofia's terror. 7 women. 7 families destroyed. 7 futures erased because of this monster's need to hunt. My family knows where I am, she said, voice hard. My brother has your fake address, your fake name, everything. And I activated an emergency signal before you took my phone. Police are already looking for me. It was partially true. She had activated the SOS. Whether it had transmitted without cell signal, she had no idea. But she saw uncertainty flicker across his face, saw him glance back toward his vehicle where her phone lay on the dashboard. You're lying, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Am I? Check the phone. See if the emergency SOS went through. But that means turning your back on me. That means giving me a chance to run again. Or to fight. They stood in the desert heat, predator and prey locked in a standoff neither had anticipated. Sofia's heart hammered against her ribs. Every second she kept him talking was another second of life, another second for that SOS signal to reach someone, somewhere. What's the point of fighting? He asked, taking a step closer. I'm bigger, stronger, armed. He pulled the hunting knife from its sheath, the blade catching sunlight. You think you can win this? I think I can make you work for it, Sofía replied. I think I can leave DNA under my fingernails. I think I can make sure they catch you eventually. Because they will catch you. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but you made mistakes. You left digital evidence. You used fake IDs that will trace back. You picked up a woman at an airport with cameras everywhere. You're not as smart as you think you are. For the first time, real anger crossed his features. She'd struck something, some arrogant belief in his own cleverness. He moved fast, faster than she'd expected. His hand grabbed her arm, the knife raised. Sofía reacted on pure instinct, driving the silver cross toward his face, aiming for his eyes. Caught his cheek instead, tearing skin, drawing blood. He roared, releasing her arm, and she ran again. Not into open desert this time. Back toward the rest stop, toward the concrete building, toward anything that might provide cover or weapons. She grabbed a rock the size of her fist from the ground near the picnic tables. It wasn't much, but it was something. He caught her before she reached the building, tackling her from behind. They hit the ground hard, Sofia's chin scraping against gravel. She tasted blood, felt pain explode through her jaw, but kept fighting. She swung the rock backward, connected with something soft. He grunted, his grip loosening fractionally. She rolled, bringing the rock around again, this time catching his temple. Blood poured from the wound, and she felt a savage satisfaction. Good. Let him bleed. Let him hurt. Let forensics find his blood mixed with hers. Evidence of the fight she'd promised. But he was stronger. He pinned her arms, his weight crushing her chest. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move, could only stare up at his face twisted with rage and something else. Pleasure. He was enjoying this. That's enough, he growled, one hand moving to her throat. Sofía tried to scream, but pressure on her windpipe cut off the sound. She bucked beneath him, trying to dislodge his weight, but he was immovable. Her vision started to darken at the edges. Her lungs screamed for oxygen they couldn't reach. This is how I die, she thought with strange clarity. Strangled by a monster in the Arizona desert, miles from home, killed by a love that never existed. Her mother's face appeared in her dimming consciousness. Her brother's laugh, Rose's smile, her students' sticky hands and gap-toothed grins. Every person she'd ever loved, every moment of joy she'd ever experienced, compressed into these final seconds of awareness. The pressure increased. Sofia's struggles weakened. Her body was shutting down, oxygen-starved, failing. And then, distantly, impossibly, she heard it. An engine. A vehicle approaching on the highway. He heard it too. His grip loosened fractionally as he turned his head toward the sound. It was enough. Sofía drove her knee upward with the last of her strength, connecting with his groin. He doubled over, and she rolled free, gasping, choking, pulling precious air into her damaged throat. She tried to stand, to run toward the approaching vehicle, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. Everything hurt. Her vision swam. She crawled instead, dragging herself across gravel toward the sound of salvation. But he recovered too quickly. His hand closed around her ankle, dragging her backward. She clawed at the ground, her broken fingernails leaving furrows in the dirt. Her bracelet, the silver one with the cross charm her mother had given her, caught on a rock and snapped, the pieces scattering. Evidence some distant part of her brain catalogued. More evidence for when they find my body. He flipped her onto her back, straddled her chest. His hands returned to her throat, and this time there was no hesitation, no pause. This time he meant to finish it. You should have just gotten on your knees, he hissed, his face inches from hers. I would have made it quick. Sofía couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare up at the cloudless Arizona sky and think about all the tomorrows she'd never see. She wouldn't become a mother, wouldn't grow old with her own mother, wouldn't dance at her brother's wedding, wouldn't see her students graduate from kindergarten. All because she'd believed in love. All because she'd trusted a voice through speakers, a face through pixels, a future built on digital lies. The world faded to gray, then to black. Her last conscious thought was a prayer, wordless and desperate, that somehow someone would find her, that her death wouldn't be meaningless, that the monster choking the life from her body would face justice. Sofía Reyes, 29-year-old kindergarten teacher from Guadalajara, died at approximately 1:47 p.m. on April 15, 2023, in a rest stop parking lot surrounded by desert she'd never wanted to see. Her body went limp. Her eyes stared unseeing at the sky. Her heart, which had loved so hopefully and hurt so deeply, beat its final rhythm and stopped. The vehicle she'd heard on the highway, an elderly couple in an RV, passed by without stopping. They saw nothing unusual at the rest stop, just an empty parking lot and the endless desert beyond. Detective Elena Martinez had seen the notification on her phone at 1:19 p.m. Emergency SOS activated. Phoenix metro area. International number registered to Sofía Reyes. Mexican national. Last known GPS ping. Pinal Pioneer Parkway, State Route 79. She'd been eating lunch at her desk, reviewing cold cases involving missing persons along the U.S.-Mexico border. The SOS alert made her stomach clench with familiar dread. In her 12 years with Phoenix PD's Missing Persons Unit, she'd learned to trust that feeling. Emergency signals from remote locations rarely ended well. Martinez immediately pulled up the case details. Sofía Reyes, 29, had entered the United States through Sky Harbor Airport that morning on a tourist visa. Purpose of visit: meeting boyfriend met through online dating app. Expected destination: Central Phoenix residential address. Last GPS ping: 60 miles southeast of Phoenix, middle of nowhere. Something was very wrong. Martinez grabbed her keys and badge, calling dispatch on her way to the parking garage. I need units dispatched to Pinal Pioneer Parkway Rest Area, Highway 79. Possible emergency situation involving Mexican national. And pull airport security footage for Sky Harbor arrivals. This morning between 11 and noon. Female passenger, Sofía Reyes. Copy that, detective. Pinal County Sheriff's Office is closer. Patching you through. As Martinez drove south on I-10, exceeding the speed limit with lights flashing, she called the emergency contact number listed in Sofía's entry documentation. A man answered on the first ring, speaking rapid Spanish. This is Detective Martinez with Phoenix Police. Are you related to Sofía Reyes? I'm her brother, Miguel. Is she okay? What happened? Martinez heard the panic in his voice, the knowledge that police calling was never good news. Sir, we received an emergency signal from her phone about an hour ago. Can you tell me about her plans today? She was meeting her boyfriend, Michael Patterson. He picked her up at the airport. She was supposed to call me when she got to his place, but I haven't heard from her. I've been trying her phone. It goes straight to voicemail. What do you know about this Michael Patterson? They met online on Borderless Love dating app. They've been video calling for 4 months. He seems legitimate. We verified his business license, his address, everything. But Elena, he switched to using her first name, desperation bleeding through. Her last location ping was in the middle of the desert. Why would she be there? That's what I'm going to find out. I need you to send me everything you have on Michael Patterson. Screenshots, addresses, phone numbers, photos. Everything. While Miguel compiled the information, Martinez called the Pinal County Sheriff's Office directly. This is Detective Martinez, Phoenix PD. I'm 20 minutes out from Pinal Pioneer Rest Area. What's your ETA? Deputy Chun is 5 minutes away, Detective. What are we looking for? Possible abduction of a Mexican national by someone using false identity. Approach with caution. Suspect may still be on scene. Martinez's phone buzzed with incoming messages from Miguel. Photos of Michael Patterson. From the dating profile, screenshots of conversations, the address in Phoenix he'd provided. She forwarded everything to her team with orders to verify the identity and address immediately. The response came within minutes. Detective, address exists but unit number doesn't. No resident named Michael Patterson at that building. DMV search for Michael Patterson, Phoenix area, shows multiple results but none matching the photos provided. Martinez's jaw clenched. Fake identity. Fake address. Real victim. When she arrived at the rest stop, Deputy Chen's cruiser was already there, lights flashing. Chun stood by the dumpster enclosure, his face grim. Detective, you're going to want to see this. Martinez approached the dumpster, already knowing what she'd find. Evidence of disposal, evidence of violence, evidence that Sofía Reyes hadn't made it to any boyfriend's house in Phoenix. Inside the dumpster, dumped carelessly atop bags of other trash, was a purple suitcase with a yellow ribbon. Women's clothing spilled from it. Toiletries, a Mexican passport in Sofia's name. Personal items that should have been in a guest bedroom in Phoenix, not abandoned in a rest stop dumpster 60 miles away. Martinez pulled on latex gloves and carefully extracted the passport, the clothing, the small touches that spoke of a woman's hope. A new dress, tags still attached, makeup carefully selected, a hand-woven blanket in traditional patterns, clearly a gift. A handwritten letter in Spanish that began, Mi amor. I've waited 127 days to finally hold you. Get crime scene techs here now, Martinez ordered, her voice tight. Full forensic workup. And I need K9 units. If she's not in this dumpster, she's somewhere near. While Chun coordinated the response, Martinez walked the perimeter of the rest stop. The parking lot was empty except for their vehicles. No other tourists, no witnesses, just brutal sun and desert silence. But 15 feet from the concrete building, something caught the light. Martinez crouched down. A silver bracelet, broken clasp, small cross charm. Fresh scratches in the gravel nearby, patterns suggesting someone had been dragged. And there, barely visible against the pale sand, small drops of blood. She stood slowly, scanning the desert landscape beyond the rest stop. Disturbed earth near a creosote bush. More drag marks leading away from the parking area. Her stomach sank as she followed the trail with her eyes, seeing where it led into the scrub, toward a natural depression in the terrain. Chun, I need that K9 unit expedited. And call the medical examiner. Tell them to prepare for a recovery, not a rescue. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of systematic horror. Crime scene techs arrived, photographing everything, collecting the bracelet, the blood drops, the contents of the dumpster. K9 units spread out across the desert, handlers directing their dogs in careful search grids. Martinez stood in the shade of the concrete building, reviewing airport security footage on her tablet. The tech team had isolated the relevant clips and sent them over. She watched Sofía Reyes arrive at baggage claim, watched her collect the purple suitcase with the yellow ribbon, watched her text someone with a smile on her face. Then Martinez watched her walk to arrivals, watched a man in a blue shirt approach. The camera angle was poor, the man's face partially obscured, but his body language was all wrong. He kept his head angled away from cameras, wore sunglasses despite being indoors, and when he took Sofia's elbow, his grip appeared controlling, not affectionate. Sofia's body language told the story Martinez had seen too many times. Initial excitement giving way to confusion, stiffness in her posture, uncertainty in how she moved beside him. A woman realizing too late that something was wrong. Martinez watched them disappear into the parking structure, watched the timestamp click forward, and felt rage burn through her professional detachment. This young woman had done everything right. She'd verified information. She'd told people her plans. She'd activated an emergency signal when she realized the danger. And it hadn't been enough. Detective, one of the K9 handlers waved from approximately 200 yards into the desert. Cadaver alert. High confidence. Martinez walked toward them, each step feeling heavier than the last. The handler stood beside a natural depression, his dog sitting at attention, trained to indicate without contaminating the scene. Here, the handler said unnecessarily. Martinez could see the disturbed earth, the amateur attempt at concealment. Sand and rocks piled over something, desert brush arranged to look natural but failing under trained observation. She'd seen dozens of burial sites in her career. This one looked fresh. This one looked rushed. Nobody touches anything until forensics gets here, Martinez ordered, pulling out her phone to call the medical examiner personally. And someone bring me water. It's going to be a long day. The excavation began at 4:30 p.m., nearly 6 hours after Sofia's emergency signal. Martinez watched the forensic team work with meticulous care, photographing every layer, collecting soil samples, documenting every detail. When they uncovered the body, Martinez had to step away for a moment. Not because of the state of the remains, she'd seen worse, but because of what the body represented. A young woman who'd flown to America believing in love. A teacher who'd wanted nothing more than a family of her own. A daughter, a sister, a friend, murdered by a predator who'd used technology to build the perfect trap. Dr. Patricia Huang, the medical examiner, performed a preliminary examination on site before the body was transported. Martinez stood nearby, taking notes. Female, Hispanic, age consistent with late 20s. Dr. Huang reported, her voice clinically detached in the way of people who dealt with death daily. Obvious signs of trauma. Ligature marks on the neck, defensive wounds on the hands. I'm seeing broken fingernails, which means we'll likely have the perpetrator's DNA. Blunt force trauma to the head. Primary cause of death appears to be asphyxiation, but I'll know more after the full autopsy. Time of death. Based on decomposition and environmental factors, I'd estimate 4 to 6 hours ago. Definitely today. Martinez checked her watch. It was nearly 6 p.m. If Dr. Huang was right, Sofia had died around the time her emergency signal was sent. She'd activated the SOS knowing she was in mortal danger, and then she'd fought, and then she'd died alone in the desert while Martinez was still eating lunch, while her family in Mexico was still waiting for a phone call, while the world continued on, oblivious to another woman erased by male violence. Get every possible piece of evidence, Martinez told the forensic team. DNA, fibers, anything. This man has done this before, and he'll do it again if we don't stop him. Back at the rest stop, techs were processing the dumpster contents and reviewing footage from the rest stop's single security camera. The footage was grainy, the angle poor, but it showed enough. A white Ford Explorer arriving at 1:17 p.m. 2 people exiting, one clearly resisting. A confrontation near the building. The female subject running. The footage cut off due to camera limitations, but the vehicle departed alone at 1:47 p.m. Martinez froze the frame on the vehicle, enhancing the image as much as technology allowed. Partial license plate visible. Arizona tags. Started with 4LV. White Explorer, 2015 or 2016 model. One male occupant departing, no passenger. She ran the partial plate through DMV, got 18 possible matches. Cross-referenced with registered white Ford Explorers in Arizona. 10 results. Started calling each one. The 7th number she called got a hit. Vehicle registered to Michael Patterson, the DMV clerk reported. Address matches the one you provided. The address that doesn't exist, Martinez muttered. What about the license photo? The clerk sent it over. Martinez studied the DMV photo, comparing it to the airport footage. Different person. The DMV photo showed a man in his mid-30s, pleasant-looking, generic. The man in the airport footage was older, harder, more careful about hiding his face. Run the name through NCIC, Martinez ordered, and fingerprint the vehicle registration if it was done in person. While waiting for results, Martinez called Miguel Reyes back. It was the call she'd been dreading, the call that would shatter a family. Detective Martinez? Did you find her? Is she okay? Martinez closed her eyes briefly. Miguel, I'm very sorry. We found Sofía. She's deceased. We're treating this as a homicide investigation. The sound that came through the phone was inhuman. A brother's anguish too profound for words. Martinez heard other voices in the background. Heard a woman's screams. Heard the moment a family's world ended. I'm so sorry, Martinez said in Spanish, her own voice breaking slightly. We're going to find who did this. I promise you, we will find him. When Miguel could speak again, his voice was hollow. She was supposed to call. She promised she'd call when she got to his place. We should have known something was wrong sooner. We should have. This isn't your fault, Martinez interrupted firmly. Sofía did everything right. She told you her plans. She activated an emergency signal. She fought back. The man who did this is a predator who used sophisticated technology to deceive her. We're going to get him, Miguel. We're going to get justice for Sofía. The Maricopa County Medical Examiner's office occupied a low-slung concrete building on the outskirts of Phoenix, designed with the grim practicality of a place where death was routine. Dr. Patricia Huang had performed over 3,000 autopsies in her 20-year career, but she approached each body with the same meticulous respect, the same understanding that this had been a person with dreams and people who loved them. Sofía Reyes arrived in a black body bag at 8:47 p.m. on April 15th, less than 10 hours after she'd landed at Sky Harbor Airport believing in love. Dr. Huang began the external examination at 9:15 p.m., Detective Martinez observing from behind the glass partition. Everything was photographed, measured, documented. The blue sweater Sofía had chosen because it brought out her eyes, now torn and stained. The jeans she'd bought specially for this trip. The white sneakers that were supposed to carry her on romantic hikes through Arizona landscapes. Female subject, Hispanic, approximately 29 years of age. Dr. Huang spoke into her recorder, her voice steady and clinical. Height 5 feet 4 inches. Weight approximately 128 pounds. Identifying marks include a small scar on the right knee and a tattoo of a hummingbird on the left shoulder blade. Martinez made notes, remembering Miguel's confirmation of those exact details. The scar from a childhood bicycle accident. The hummingbird tattoo Sofía had gotten on her 25th birthday, representing freedom and joy and all the things she'd wanted her life to become. External examination reveals significant trauma, Dr. Huang continued. Ligature marks around the neck, consistent with manual strangulation. Petechial hemorrhaging in the conjunctiva and sclera of both eyes. Extensive bruising on the anterior neck. Pattern suggests strangulation from the front by a right-handed assailant. The doctor moved to Sofía's hands, and Martinez leaned closer to the glass. Defensive wounds on both hands. 3 broken fingernails on the right hand, index, middle, and ring fingers. The breaks are fresh, jagged, consistent with fighting off an attacker. Significant material under the remaining fingernails, appears to be tissue and possibly blood. Collecting samples for DNA analysis. There it was. The evidence Sofía had promised to leave behind. Even as she was dying, she'd fought to mark her killer, to give investigators the tools they'd need for justice. Dr. Huang continued her examination, cataloging every injury with precise medical terminology. Abrasions on both forearms consistent with defensive blocking. Bruising on the torso from being pinned down. Blunt force trauma to the left temporal region of the skull, likely from impact with a rock or similar object. Crushed hyoid bone from the strangulation. Time of death based on rigor mortis, body temperature, and environmental factors, I'm placing between 1:30 and 2 p.m. today. Dr. Huang concluded. Cause of death: asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. Contributing factor: blunt force trauma to the head. Manner of death: homicide. She paused, looking up at the observation window where Martinez stood. This victim fought hard, detective. The injuries tell me she was conscious and resisting for at least 8 to 12 minutes before death. She didn't go quietly. Martinez nodded, something fierce and proud burning in her chest alongside the grief. Sofía Reyes had been a kindergarten teacher who probably weighed 120 pounds soaking wet, but she'd fought a predator twice her size for 12 minutes, long enough to claw his DNA under her nails, long enough to leave evidence across the crime scene, long enough to activate an emergency signal that had brought law enforcement to her body before her killer had time to cover his tracks completely. Rush that DNA analysis, Martinez said. I want results by morning. The forensic lab worked through the night. Martinez stayed at her desk, reviewing every piece of evidence, building the timeline, constructing the profile of a killer who was still out there, possibly already hunting his next victim. At 3:47 a.m. on April 16th, her phone rang. Detective Martinez, this is Sarah Chun from the forensics lab. We've got results on the DNA from under the victim's fingernails. Martinez sat up straighter, exhaustion forgotten. Tell me you got a hit. We got a hit. Cody's match to a Robert Allen Vickers, age 43, last known address in Mesa, Arizona. He's in the system for a 2012 assault charge in California. Martinez was already pulling up Vickers' file before Chen finished speaking. The photograph that appeared on her screen made her stomach clench. The face was the same one she'd seen in the grainy airport footage, the same one captured partially in the rest stop security video. Robert Allen Vickers, not Michael Patterson, a predator who'd built an entire fake identity to hunt women. Martinez read through his criminal history with growing fury. The 2012 assault charge in California, reduced to a misdemeanor, 6 months in county jail. A 2015 investigation in San Diego involving a missing woman named Jennifer Chun. Insufficient evidence to charge. A 2017 sexual assault accusation in Phoenix. Victim had dropped charges and left the state. A 2019 restraining order violation, minimal consequences. A 2021 questioning in connection with a missing person case in Illinois, released due to lack of evidence. The pattern was clear. Vickers had been escalating for over a decade, learning from each encounter, getting better at covering his tracks. And the system had failed repeatedly to stop him, letting him slip through gaps in jurisdiction, through victims too terrified to testify, through prosecutors who didn't think they had enough evidence. Until now. Until Sofía Reyes had literally torn pieces of him away as she died, leaving undeniable proof of his guilt. Chun, I need everything on Robert Vickers. Known associates, vehicle registrations, employment history, digital footprint, everything. Already pulling it, detective. And there's more. We found his laptop hidden in a storage unit registered under one of his aliases. Tech team is going through it now. By 6 a.m., Martinez had assembled a task force in the conference room. FBI, U.S. Marshals, Mexican federal authorities via video conference, and officers from multiple jurisdictions where Vickers had left his trail of destruction. Special Agent Torres from the FBI laid out what they'd found on Vickers' laptop, and the room fell into stunned silence. Vickers had profiles on 6 different dating platforms, Torres reported, pulling up screenshots on the conference room display. Tinder, Match, Bumble, Plenty of Fish, OkCupid, and Borderless Love. Each profile used a different stolen identity, different photos, different backstories. We're running facial recognition on all the photos he used, trying to identify the real people whose identities he stole. The screen filled with faces. Michael Patterson, the identity used to lure Sofía. David Morrison, used on Match. James Wheeler on Bumble. Each one with carefully constructed profiles. Each one designed to appeal to vulnerable women seeking connection. But here's where it gets worse, Torres continued. We found deepfake software on his laptop, along with tutorial videos showing how to create fake video calls. He'd steal photos of real men from social media, LinkedIn, wherever, then use AI to create videos of them saying whatever he wanted. The voice cloning software let him sound like anyone. Martinez thought of Miguel describing the 4 months of video calls between Sofía and Michael, the nightly conversations that had built trust and intimacy. All of it fake. All of it constructed by a predator using cutting-edge technology to create the perfect lure. How many women did he contact? Martinez asked. Hundreds, Torres said grimly. We're cross-referencing his message history with missing person reports across multiple states. So far, we've identified 6 women who agreed to meet him in person and subsequently disappeared. 6 women. Plus Sofía made 7, just like the killer had told her before he murdered her. Torres pulled up photographs, and Martinez felt the weight of all those lost lives settle onto her shoulders. Emily Cartwright, 39, Vickers' actual wife, reported missing from Grand Rapids, Michigan in 2017. Her family filed a missing person report when she stopped answering calls. Vickers told them she'd left him for another man. Case went cold. Rebecca Morrison, 44, divorced mother of 3 from Bloomington, Indiana, disappeared March 2018 after telling friends she was meeting someone she'd met online. Her car was found abandoned at a rest stop. Sound familiar? It did. The same MO, the same hunting ground. Jennifer Hayes, 41, widow from Champaign, Illinois, last seen August 2018, told her sister she was visiting a boyfriend in Arizona. Never returned. Patricia Gonzalez, 38, single mother from Fort Wayne, Indiana, missing November 2018. Her last text message to her daughter said she was happy and in love. Susan Wright, 45, divorced nurse from Toledo, Ohio, vanished January 2019. Her laptop showed extensive chat history with a man calling himself David Morrison. Amanda Foster, 40, teacher from Indianapolis, reported missing just 2 weeks before Sofía Reyes, February 2019. She told her principal she was taking a long weekend to visit her boyfriend in Phoenix. Martinez stared at the faces of 7 women, all between 38 and 44 years old, all divorced or widowed, all mothers or teachers or caregivers, all women who'd been conditioned by society to be trusting, to be giving, to believe that their value came from being chosen by a man. And Vickers had weaponized that conditioning, had turned their hope for connection into a death trap. We need to find burial sites, Martinez said. If Sofía was buried in that desert location, the others might be nearby. Get cadaver dogs, ground-penetrating radar, everything. The FBI agent handling digital forensics raised her hand. Detective, there's something else. We found photos on Vickers' laptop, images of women that don't match any of the confirmed victims. Some of them are just screenshots from dating profiles, but others appear to be surveillance photos, women who don't know they're being photographed. Potential future victims, Martinez said. Get those images to all the dating platforms. See if we can identify the women and warn them. Already on it. But Detective, Vickers' last login to his email was yesterday at 2:34 p.m., about 45 minutes after we estimate Sofía Reyes died. He was checking to see if her family had reported her missing yet. Martinez checked the timeline. At 2:34 p.m. yesterday, she'd been en route to the rest stop, still hoping this might be a rescue operation instead of a recovery. Vickers had been monitoring the situation, calculating his next move. Last known location? Martinez demanded. His phone last pinged a cell tower in Tucson at 11:47 p.m. last night. Then it went dark. We think he crossed into Mexico early this morning. Of course he had. Vickers had done this before, had evaded capture across multiple states, knew exactly how to disappear. But this time he'd made a critical mistake. This time he'd killed someone whose family refused to stop looking, whose emergency signal had brought law enforcement before he'd finished covering his tracks, whose DNA evidence under her fingernails had given them irrefutable proof. Issue a warrant for his arrest. First-degree murder, Martinez ordered. Alert Border Patrol, Mexican Federal Police, Interpol. Get his photo on every news channel. I want this man's face everywhere. And someone notify the families of those other 6 victims. Tell them we might finally have answers. The notification calls were the hardest part of Martinez's job. She spoke personally to Rebecca Morrison's eldest daughter, now 27, who'd been waiting 6 years to know what happened to her mother. She called Patricia Gonzalez's sister, who'd never stopped searching. She contacted Emily Cartwright's parents, who'd spent 6 years believing their daughter had abandoned her marriage for another man. Each call brought the same reaction. Initial shock, then grief, then a desperate gratitude that finally, someone was listening, someone believed them, someone was fighting for justice. "My mom told me she was in love," Rebecca Morrison's daughter said through tears. "She showed me his picture, said he was perfect. I was happy for her, detective. I encouraged her to go meet him. And now I know I sent my mother to her death." "You didn't send her anywhere," Martinez said firmly. "A predator hunted your mother. He manipulated her, deceived her, and killed her. That's on him, not you, not her. She deserved to find love. She deserved to be happy. What happened to her is not her fault and it's not yours." The same conversation repeated 7 times. 7 families who'd been living in the torture of not knowing, who'd imagined their loved ones living secret lives somewhere, who'd wondered if maybe they'd chosen to disappear. And now they knew the truth, which somehow felt worse and better simultaneously. By noon on April 16th, Robert Allen Vickers' face was on every news channel in America and Mexico. "Suspected serial killer sought in deaths of 7 women," the headlines screamed. "Dating app predator used deepfake technology to lure victims." The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Tips flooded in, most of them useless, some concerning. People claimed to have seen Vickers in every state from California to Florida. But one tip, called in at 3:22 p.m. from a gas station attendant in Nogales, Arizona, had the ring of truth. "Yeah, I saw him," the attendant told the FBI agent who called him back. "Yesterday night, maybe around midnight. Paid cash for gas and snacks. He was driving a different car than what you said though. Not a white Explorer, it was a dark blue Honda Civic. I noticed because he seemed real nervous. Kept looking around like he was expecting someone to recognize him." Border Patrol reviewed their footage. At 2:17 a.m. on April 16th, a dark blue Honda Civic with stolen plates had crossed into Mexico at Nogales. The driver had used a fake ID identifying himself as James Mitchell. The border agent hadn't looked closely. It was the middle of the night, the ID looked legitimate enough, and thousands of people crossed that border every day. Robert Vickers had escaped to Mexico, where he had no criminal record, no warrants, no reason for anyone to look at him twice. Martinez stood in the task force command center, staring at the map of Mexico, calculating. Vickers had a 16-hour head start. He could be in Mexico City by now or Guadalajara or anywhere. Mexico was a big country, and a man with fake IDs and cash could disappear easily. But Martinez had something Vickers didn't expect. She had the victim's family, and they weren't giving up. Miguel Reyes appeared at a press conference that evening, flanked by his mother and Rosa, Sofia's best friend. Martinez stood behind them, watching as Miguel held up a photograph of his sister, smiling in her classroom, surrounded by 5-year-olds. "My sister Sofía believed in love," Miguel said in Spanish, Martinez translating for the English-language media. "She was a good person who deserved happiness. The man who killed her is a monster who uses technology to hunt women. He's in Mexico now, hiding, thinking he's escaped justice. But we will find him. We will not rest until he faces consequences for what he did to Sofía, to Emily, to Rebecca, to Jennifer, to Patricia, to Susan, to Amanda, to all the women he murdered." Martinez watched Sofia's mother, who looked like she'd aged a decade in 24 hours. She held her daughter's photograph against her chest like a talisman. Like if she held it tight enough, Sofía might come back. "Please," the mother said in halting English, tears streaming down her face. "If you see this man, call police. Don't let him kill another daughter. Don't let another mother lose her child." The press conference went viral. Within hours, Vickers' face was all over Mexican media. News programs, social media, newspapers. The story had everything. International intrigue, technology, serial murder, grieving families demanding justice. And somewhere in Mexico, Robert Allen Vickers watched his face appear on every screen and realized his hunting days were over. The tip came 23 days later on May 8th, from an anonymous caller to the Mexico City police. An American man matching Vickers' description was living in a cheap hostel in Barrio Tepido, paying cash, keeping his head down, avoiding cameras. Mexican federal police established surveillance. For 48 hours, they watched and waited, confirming identity through facial recognition, coordinating with U.S. Marshals, building an airtight case. At 5:47 a.m. on May 8th, they moved in. Martinez got the call at 6:15 a.m. Phoenix time. "We have him, detective. Vickers is in custody in Mexico City." No resistance. Martinez closed her eyes, feeling something unlock in her chest. "What did you find?" For fake IDs, 3 burner phones, laptop with the deepfake software still installed, and $8,400 in U.S. currency. He also had photos, detective. Photos of women we haven't identified yet. We think he was already planning his next hunt. But there wouldn't be a next hunt. Robert Allen Vickers' predatory career was over. The extradition process took 3 months of legal wrangling. Mexico's constitution prohibited extraditing prisoners to countries where they might face the death penalty. Arizona prosecutors had to agree. Life without parole but no execution. The families agreed immediately. They didn't want Vickers to become a martyr, didn't want years of death penalty appeals. They wanted him locked in a cage for the rest of his life, forgotten and alone. The same isolation he'd imposed on his victims in their final moments. On August 12, 2023, Robert Allen Vickers was transferred into U.S. custody at the border and transported to Maricopa County Jail, where he was formally charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder. The trial began on October 23, 2023, in Maricopa County Superior Court, 6 months and 8 days after Sofía Reyes had landed at Sky Harbor Airport believing she was meeting the love of her life. The courtroom was packed with media, victim advocates, and family members who'd traveled from across the country and from Mexico to witness justice. Robert Allen Vickers sat at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, his face blank, revealing nothing. He'd refused every plea bargain, insisted on his innocence despite overwhelming evidence, seemed to believe his intelligence would somehow outmaneuver the prosecution. He was wrong. Deputy County Attorney Sarah Chun stood before the jury during opening statements, her voice clear and unwavering. Over the next 2 weeks, you're going to hear a story about a predator who weaponized technology and human loneliness to hunt, deceive, and murder 7 women. 7 mothers, daughters, sisters, teachers, nurses, good women who deserved love and found death instead. Chun walked the jury through Vickers' methodology with clinical precision. The fake profiles on dating apps, each carefully constructed to appeal to specific types of vulnerable women. The deepfake technology that allowed him to conduct months of video calls using stolen faces and cloned voices. The systematic targeting of divorced women, widows, single mothers, women conditioned by society to be grateful for male attention. The defendant didn't just kill these women, Chun said, her voice hardening. He studied them. He learned what they wanted to hear. He built entire fictional identities designed specifically to manipulate them into trusting him. And then he lured them to remote locations and murdered them. The defense attorney, a public defender named Marcus Webb who'd been assigned the case when no private attorney would touch it, stood for his opening statement with visible reluctance. The prosecution will show you evidence of terrible crimes, Webb admitted. But they cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt that my client committed those crimes. Yes, Mr. Vickers had dating profiles. Yes, he used fake names. Catfishing, while morally questionable, is not murder. The prosecution's entire case rests on DNA evidence that could have been transferred innocently, and assumptions about technology that... Objection, Chun interrupted. Defense is arguing facts not in evidence. Sustained, Judge Patricia Williams ruled. Mr. Webb, save your arguments for closing. The prosecution's case unfolded over 8 days, each piece of evidence more damning than the last. Dr. Huang testified about Sofia's autopsy, describing in clinical detail the violence of her final moments. The victim fought for her life. the defensive wounds, the DNA under her fingernails, the patterns of injury. They all tell us she was conscious and resisting for approximately 8 to 12 minutes before death. Chun displayed photographs of Sofia's hands, the broken nails, the tissue samples that had been collected. Dr. Huang, in your professional opinion, how did the defendant's DNA end up under the victim's fingernails? She clawed him during the struggle. This is classic defensive wound evidence. The victim literally tore pieces of her attacker's skin away as she fought for her life. The DNA expert from the forensics lab testified next, explaining the science in terms the jury could understand. The DNA profile we extracted from under Ms. Reyes' fingernails matches the defendant's DNA profile at 13 separate genetic markers. The probability of this match occurring by random chance is approximately 1 in 47 billion. There are only about 8 billion people on Earth. This DNA belongs to Robert Vickers. The digital forensics expert walked the jury through Vickers' laptop, showing the deepfake software, the tutorial videos, the folders containing photos of all 7 victims plus dozens of other women. This folder, the expert said, pulling up a directory labeled prospects, contains surveillance photos of women the defendant was tracking, photos taken without their knowledge at grocery stores, coffee shops, parking lots. Each photo is labeled with information: first name, approximate age, whether they wore a wedding ring, whether they appeared to be alone. The jury looked horrified. This wasn't just murder, it was systematic hunting. Chun introduced the video evidence next, playing the airport security footage of Vickers meeting Sofía. The jury watched a young woman's excitement turn to confusion, watched her body language shift from hopeful to uncertain, watched a predator guide his prey toward the parking structure with a hand too tight on her elbow. The defense wants you to believe Mr. Vickers' DNA could have been transferred innocently, Chun said. But watch this footage. Does this look innocent? Does this look like a man greeting his girlfriend? Or does this look like a predator who knows exactly what he's doing? The rest stop security footage came next, grainy and brief, but devastating. The jury watched Sofía run from the vehicle, watched her desperation, watched her final moments of freedom before the camera angle lost them. The vehicle that arrived with 2 people departed with 1, Chun stated flatly. Sofía Reyes never left that rest stop alive. The testimony from the Real Michael Stevens, whose identity had been stolen to create the Michael Patterson persona, came via video link from Colorado. Stevens appeared shaken, traumatized by the knowledge that his face had been used to lure a woman to her death. I've never been on borderless love, Stevens testified. I've never spoken to Sofía Reyes. I didn't even know my photos had been stolen until police contacted me. Whoever created that profile took my pictures from LinkedIn and Facebook without my permission or knowledge. Chun displayed side-by-side comparisons. The Real Michael Stevens and the deepfaked videos Vickers had created. The technology was sophisticated enough that unless you knew what to look for, the fake was convincing. This is the future of deception, Chun told the jury. And this defendant used it to become the perfect predator. But the most powerful testimony came from the victims' families. Miguel Reyes took the stand on day 6, wearing a suit that hung looser on him than it had 6 months ago. He'd lost weight, Martinez noticed. Grief had hollowed him out. Chun walked him through the evidence gently. Can you identify this purple suitcase with the yellow ribbon? That's Sofia's, Miguel said, his voice cracking. I helped her pack it. She was so excited, so hopeful. She bought new clothes she couldn't afford because she wanted to make a good impression. And this handwritten letter, can you identify the handwriting? That's my sister's writing. She spent hours on that letter, practicing what she wanted to say to the man she loved. Miguel's hands shook as he held the letter. She wrote, I've waited 127 days to finally hold you. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for making me believe in love again. Several jurors wiped their eyes. In the gallery, Sofia's mother sobbed quietly, Rosa holding her. Miguel, tell the jury about your sister, Chun said softly. And Miguel did. He talked about Sofía raising him after their father died, working 2 jobs to pay for his education, teaching kindergarten because she loved children, wanting nothing more than a family of her own. He talked about her caution after her previous heartbreak, her careful verification of Michael's information, how she'd done everything right and it still hadn't been enough. "My sister was a good person," Miguel said, looking directly at Vickers for the first time. "She deserved to be loved, not hunted. She deserved to grow old, to have children, to be happy. And he took all of that away because he's a monster who enjoys making women suffer." Vickers stared back, expression still blank, and that callousness might have been the most damning evidence of all. Rebecca Morrison's daughter testified about the 6 years she'd spent wondering if her mother had abandoned her, the guilt she'd carried for encouraging her mom to meet David Morrison, the relief and horror of finally knowing the truth. Patricia Gonzalez's sister described the birthday cards she'd kept sending to Patricia's apartment for years, hoping her sister would eventually come home to read them. Emily Cartwright's elderly parents spoke about burying an empty casket because Vickers still wouldn't reveal where he'd buried their daughter's body, even after confessing to killing her during a police interview. The prosecution rested after 8 days of testimony. The defense's case lasted less than 2. Vickers didn't testify, taking the Fifth Amendment, which was his right but looked terrible to the jury. Webb called a few character witnesses who testified that Vickers had been a good employee, a quiet neighbor, a man who kept to himself. None of them could explain the evidence. Webb tried to argue that the DNA evidence might have been contaminated, that the digital evidence might have been planted, that the timeline of death was uncertain. But Chun systematically destroyed each argument in cross-examination. In closing arguments, Webb did his best with an impossible case. "The prosecution has shown you that terrible crimes occurred. They have not proven beyond a reasonable doubt that my client committed them. Robert Vickers may have made poor choices in his personal life, may have lied to women online, but that doesn't make him a murderer." Chen's closing was devastating in its simplicity. Robert Vickers is a serial killer who used 21st-century technology to hunt 20th-century prey, women who wanted love. He created fake identities. He used deepfake software to build months of false intimacy. He targeted vulnerable women, lured them to remote locations, and murdered them. We know this because Sofía Reyes, even as she was dying, tore pieces of his skin from his face and trapped them under her fingernails. We know this because his laptop contains evidence of systematic predation. We know this because 7 women met Robert Vickers and 7 women died. Chun pointed at Vickers. "The defense wants you to believe this is all circumstantial, all coincidence. But you saw the evidence. You heard the testimony. You know what happened. Sofía Reyes deserves justice. Emily, Rebecca, Jennifer, Patricia, Susan, and Amanda deserve justice. And you have the power to give it to them." The jury deliberated for 6 hours and 23 minutes. When they returned, the 4 women stood and read the verdict with a steady voice. In the matter of the state of Arizona versus Robert Allen Vickers, Count 1, first-degree murder of Sofía Reyes, we find the defendant guilty. Sofía's mother collapsed in her seat, Miguel and Rosa holding her as she wept. In the gallery, the families of the other victims embraced, tears of grief and relief mixing together. Count 2, first-degree murder of Emily Cartwright, guilty. Count 3, first-degree murder of Rebecca Morrison, guilty. 7 counts of first-degree murder. 7 guilty verdicts, plus additional counts of kidnapping, identity theft, and fraud. Vickers showed no reaction, staring straight ahead as his life was forfeit. The sentencing hearing took place 3 weeks later. Judge Williams had reviewed the pre-sentence reports, the victim impact statements, the psychological evaluations that labeled Vickers a psychopath with no capacity for empathy or rehabilitation. The victim impact statements were read first, each family given the opportunity to address their loved one's killer. Sofía's mother, too ill to travel, had recorded a video statement. Martinez stood at the prosecution table, watching the screen along with everyone else as an elderly woman with Sofía's eyes spoke in Spanish, Martinez's colleague translating. "You killed my daughter, but you could not break her spirit," Sofía's mother said, her voice shaking but firm. "Even as she died, she fought you. She left evidence that caught you. She was stronger than you, braver than you, better than you. You are nothing. You will die in prison, forgotten and alone, while my Sofía's memory lives on in the students she taught, in the family who loved her, in the laws that will change because of her story. You took her life, but she took your freedom. She won. Miguel read his own statement in person. My sister raised me. She sacrificed her own dreams so I could have mine. She wanted nothing more than to find love and start a family. You turned that hope into a weapon and used it to murder her. I hope every day in prison feels like the eternity you stole from her. After all 7 families had spoken, Judge Williams addressed Vickers directly. Mr. Vickers, you have been convicted of 7 counts of first-degree murder, crimes of exceptional cruelty and depravity. You systematically hunted, deceived, and murdered 7 women whose only crime was wanting to be loved. You showed them no mercy. This court will show you none. Judge Williams sentenced him to life without possibility of parole on each count of murder, to be served consecutively. 7 life sentences, plus 25 years for kidnapping, 5 years for identity theft, all consecutive. You will die in prison, Mr. Vickers. You will never again see the outside of a cell. You will never again harm another woman. This court is adjourned. As Vickers was led away in shackles, he glanced back at the gallery one final time. His eyes found Martinez, and for just a moment, his blank expression cracked, revealing something underneath. Not remorse, recognition. He knew he'd finally met someone he couldn't manipulate or escape. Martinez held his gaze until he was gone. Outside the courthouse, media surrounded the families. Miguel stood at the microphone, flanked by the other victims' relatives, a united front of grief and determination. Today we got justice for our loved ones, Miguel said. But this isn't over. We're starting a foundation in Sofia's name to educate women about the dangers of online dating, to push for better verification on dating apps, to make sure technology companies are held accountable when their platforms are used to hunt people. The legislation that would eventually be called Sofia's Law was already being drafted, requiring dating apps to implement video verification, optional background checks, and safety features for users meeting in person for the first time, especially across international borders. 2 years later, Martinez stood in Guadalajara at the dedication of the Sofía Reyes Memorial Garden at the kindergarten where she taught. The garden was full of flowers the children had planted, bright colors that Sofía would have loved. Sofia's students, now 7 years old, had written messages to their teacher on stones painted with butterflies and hummingbirds. We miss you, Maestra. You were the best teacher. I hope you're happy in heaven. Miguel approached Martinez as she stood by the memorial plaque. Thank you for never giving up on my sister. I made her a promise, Martinez said simply, and she made it easy by leaving us everything we needed to catch him. She was always smart, Miguel said, smiling through tears. Even at the end, the foundation had already helped change laws in 3 states, had provided resources to families of other missing persons, had educated thousands of women about digital safety. Sofia's death had been senseless and brutal, but her family had transformed that tragedy into something that saved lives. Martinez thought about the last time she'd visited Vickers in prison, a routine check to see if he'd finally reveal the burial locations of the victims whose bodies had never been found. He'd refused, maintaining control over the family's grief even from behind bars. But what he didn't understand was that he'd already lost. The women he'd murdered had won. They'd left evidence. They'd brought families together. They'd changed laws. They'd made the world marginally safer for the women who came after them. Martinez's phone buzzed with a news alert. Another dating app had just implemented mandatory video verification following pressure from advocacy groups. Another small victory. She looked at the memorial garden, at Sofia's smiling face in the photograph, at the children who still remembered their teacher with love. Robert Vickers had taken Sofia's life, but he hadn't taken her impact. She'd touched more lives through her death than he ever would through his miserable existence. And in the end, that was the truest form of justice. Martinez laid a single white rose at the memorial, whispered a quiet promise to keep fighting for victims like Sofía, and walked back into the sunlight, ready to answer the next call, to help the next family, to catch the next predator. Because somewhere out there, another woman was swiping through dating profiles, hoping for connection, believing in love. And Martinez would be there, vigilant and relentless, making sure that hope didn't turn into tragedy. The work was never finished, but neither was the fight.